Welcome back to our final video in this series on using your Sophos XG. My name is John, and I am a support technician with Management Concepts. In this video, we're going to be going over the creation of a firewall rule. Now, in previous videos, I've mentioned that these rules need to be handled with a little caution. These rules dictate the flow of your network traffic and what is being allowed into your network and out of your network. An example of a firewall rule you have is one that allows the network plugged into your LAN port on the Sophos to leave out the WAN port and reach the internet. Creating a rule such as that will allow internal networks to access the internet. There are a lot of features that your Sophos XG can do, but it's these firewall rules that allow those features to be applied and function. To start off, we're going to go ahead and log into the Sophos firewall. From there, we'll go back to our navigation tree on the left and select Firewall. From here, you will either see one of two things. If you're setting up a new Sophos device, there will be a basic default rule here. If you have previously had your Sophos set up, or had it prepared for you by one of our technicians here at Management Concepts, then you are going to see a bundle of different rules. The simpler your network can be, the less rules you'll need in place. On this page with the firewall rules, you'll find some useful bits of data. Under the bold title of the rule, you'll see the traffic in megabytes or gigabytes that have been passing through your firewall. This is always a good place to confirm your rule is working, because you'll be able to see the traffic hitting the rule in the form of inbound data and outbound data. On this page, you can also find the basics of what makes up your rule, such as the source location where the traffic is coming from, and the destination location, where the traffic is going to. If you have narrowed down specific source traffic, it will show up under its respective zone. The What column is there to let you know what TCP or UDP port numbers are allowed to go in or out of your network. The Accept or Reject action is reflected in the Action column. Finally, the last thing here is the On-Off switch at the far right. This little switch is handy when you create a rule and someone in your office says their internet broke. You can easily just turn off that rule and take a look at what might have gone wrong. A newly created rule is on by default. Now, that's not the only thing you can find here. If you click any of these rules, you'll receive an extended menu. It's here you'll get a few more things to make note of. The ID number, to the far left, is a number given to the rule when you create that rule. You may look for this when you are reviewing the firewall's logs in the log viewer, as it will tell you what rule ID is being hit. This number can also be seen next to the bold title of the rule. You can also see a breakdown of some of the details that have been selected inside the rule. For example, the first rule on display here reflects the web filter applied to this rule, is the default workplace policy. It also states what the rule does in a basic sentence. In the bottom right of the extended menu, you'll see 5 buttons. The first button is the Clone button. This Clone button will ask if you want to create a duplicate of the rule above or below the rule you currently have selected. This can be very useful if you want to test a rule that has a slight change to it, or if you want a rule that has web filtering turned on and another with it turned off. A good example of cloning is when we installed a Sophos firewall for a school. We wanted one rule to have web filtering on for staff and students, but we needed a rule available that didn't have filtering for security presentations for the staff after hours. By cloning the first rule and removing the web filter, we could simply turn on and off the rule whenever we wanted to filter the traffic or not, and we can do that by just using the on-off switches. The next button is one that looks like a pencil. This one is an easy one. This is your Edit button. Clicking this button will bring you into the edit menu for the rule and allows you to make changes. The next button, after that one, is the plus symbol, which allows you to create a fresh, new rule either above or below the rule you have selected. You can create a business rule or a network rule above or below the target rule. I'll go over business and network rules in a moment. The fourth button is a little up-down arrow. By selecting this button, your cursor will change into a move symbol when you hover over a rule. When your cursor changes, you can then click and drag the rule to place it in the order that you want. This goes back to my previous statement that the order of the rules matter. that is something to remember if you find yourself troubleshooting a rule that isn't working. If it doesn't work, make sure none of the rules above it would prevent it from working. Lastly, there is the trash can symbol. This button is simple and straightforward. It deletes the rule. Now, there is two different types of rules: user network rules and business application rules. User/network rules controls traffic for your users and internal network. This, for example, is the type of rule you'd select to allow traffic between your LAN and VPN traffic to talk, or to allow LAN to talk out the WAN port. A business application rule protects and controls access to your network and servers. This is, for example, traffic coming in. A good example of this is when using the remote desktop connection software to RDP to the server, or making sure Office 365 and Exchange ports are open for communication to allow emails to come in and out. Without these rules in place, the traffic wouldn't go anywhere. Now, I've talked enough about the firewall screen. Let's move into creating a new firewall rule. We're going to start by selecting the Add Firewall Rule button in the top right. When you do so, you will get the option of a user/network rule or a business application rule. Under each in the light gray text is a description for each. We're going to create a simple allow outbound traffic rule, so we'll select user/network rule. Once inside the rule, you'll have a lot of options to choose from. For right now, let's just take it one step at a time, and I'll explain as we go. First, I'm going to type a name into the rule name box, and for this, I'll type in test1. Just under that, I'm going to leave the default action set to allow. This can be set to drop or reject as well. If you set this to drop the traffic, this will drop traffic silently and the sender will not know. If you set this to reject, the rejection of this traffic is sent back to the source and is noted in their logs. In the description box, I'm going to type in allow all outbound LAN to WAN. The description window is a good place to just leave a quick blurb about what the rule is for. For rule position, I'm going to leave as the defaulted bottom. The other option you can select here as well is top. Depending on the rule you are making, this could be a more important choice than the rule I am making. Next is options for source. The options relate to where the traffic is originating from. In this case, since it's a LAN to WAN rule, I'm going to click Add New Item and select LAN. Make sure to click the green Apply button at the bottom of the list. If you don't click it, it won't get added. Next thing to select is the source network or devices. I'm going to leave it with any, but just note that this is where you would select certain PCs or networks that you want to control the traffic on. This could be a PC that is downloading too much stuff and you want to traffic shape his or her PC, or it could be to allow VPN from a specific VLAN. The next option is called During Scheduled Time. This option is to select when you want this rule to be in effect. Because I'm creating a basic LAN to WAN rule, I'm going to leave it set to all the time. But note that in combination with the source network and devices, you could limit access based on day and time. Next is options for destination. The options here relate to where the traffic is being sent to, which in this case is the WAN port. We'll set that as the destination zone. Destination networks function similar to source networks. If you want, you could specify that this rule is directing traffic to a specific network, such as a VLAN. The services menu then allows you to narrow down the type of traffic, such as HTTPS or FTP. The identity section is reserved for when you have Active Directory set up. For my example, I'm just going to turn it off, because I don't want it limited by Active Directory, and rather I want it to affect all traffic. For those with AD, you can narrow down who this rule applies to down to the user or user groups if you have set up such users and groups. In addition, if the captive portal is active, you can check that box to allow non-AD users the opportunity to actively log in. The malware scanning section has a couple of scanning options that you can select from. The most common of which is the scan HTTP traffic. This option simply makes use of onboard malware scanning software to keep traffic that is flowing safe. The advanced section has a lot of features available in it, some of which we discovered in previous videos, and while others we won't be covering, but I'll touch on regardless here. We've touched on the traffic shaping and web policy drop-down menus in previous videos, and those are the ones you are most likely going to be interacting with. For an extra level of security, I'm going to select the LAN to WAN from the intrusion prevention drop-down to help add security against denial of service and spoof attacks. Depending on the source and destinations you selected, you may want to select an option that reflects your given choices. Application control can be used in this rule to block apps, such as AOL, Yahoo, Google Play Store. This would be a rule you'd apply after creating an application filter, which can be found under the Applications link in the navigation tree. For our example, we aren't going to select one. If your site makes use of the heartbeat feature of the Sophos, then you may want to make changes to these selections. In this example, I'm leaving them on default. One requirement of the heartbeat feature is that you need endpoint software on PCs for it to work, at which point you can set a required heartbeat quality to make use of this rule. Next is NAT and routing. This will be based on the destination you set. If your destination points out of your network and to the internet, such as to the WAN port, you'll want to leave the default setting that masquerades the source address for security reasons. If you're talking only internally, then a mask is not necessary. From there, I'll take the final step and check the log firewall traffic box so that I can start to collect traffic for the firewall's logs. You can review the selections of your rule on the right-hand side under Summary. Once done, click Save. Now your new rule will appear at the bottom of the list, and it's turned on. My rule is a clone of another here in the network, so I can see its status by looking at the in and out traffic of the original rule I cloned. That's the basics of setting up rules. The business rules are only a little different in that you need to make sure you remember that they are allowing outside traffic into your network. Without inbound rules in place, you may not receive emails, phone calls, and other services depending on your network setup. If you're setting up a new firewall, make sure to check your old firewall's rules. They will tell you what you need to set up here. Remember, be careful when handling these rules. What appears to be a simple change can have a greater impact on things than you might expect. So create and change with caution. That is where we will end today's video. It has been a pleasure taking you through a tour on how to use your Sophos XG. I hope this series has been helpful to you. If you need any further assistance, you can call us at 920-494-4949, where we can set up an appointment to assist you further. Until then, have a great day and a great night.